Hi everybody, guess what we're going to do today? We're going to set a right lapped fly zipper. Yes, that's right. I'm going to show you how to do it, and this is the way it's done in industry. Here's what we're going to do. This is one example. This is a pair of pants I made for myself, and here is the fly right inside. You're going to be able to do this after you watch this video. And here is another. In this case, this is a industrial zipper, although if you go to buy it in the store, they'll say it's a jean zipper. It's very heavy. You want a heavy zipper like this if you're making pants that are tight. These don't happen to be tight, but I had the zipper, so I put it in. All right, and here is the shield, and here is the facing. To be successful at this, you need to first make a mock-up in paper. Here it is, so you know exactly how it all fits together. See, the shield lies over underneath the facing, and you see the center front of the right pant lies right against the center front of the left pant. I'll show you how to do all this. And here is the mock-up. It's been stitched like this. Open it up. There it is. I highly suggest that you make first a paper mock-up, then a fabric mock-up if you wish to be successful making pants. These are the patterns that you can download from my website. This is the right front and the left front. They're actually the same pattern, but you modify the right side after it's sewn together in the fabric. These are the patterns for the left shield and the right facing. You want to print 2 copies of each of these patterns because one copy will be used to make your paper mock-up. Fly zippers are designed for men, so their shield is needed in a man's garment, and in a woman's garment it's exactly the same as the man's fly, except that it reverses because women's clothing laps right over left, men's laps left over right. There have been many people speculate as to why this is. Nobody seems to really know. The left fly shield says cut 2 self and cut 1 lightweight fusing. The right fly facing says cut 1 self and cut 1 lightweight fusing. Alright, the fusing is going to be fused to the one piece that's cut from the self. The self is a principal fabric used in a garment, by the way. This one says cut 2 self, cut 1 lightweight fusing, and that's going to be fused to one of the 2 pieces that have been cut for the shield. There's an easier way to do this, and that is to first cut out, or as the industry says, block out a piece of the self fabric and block out a piece of fusing, fuse them together. That means that now you can lay one piece of the self fabric that has not been fused over top, and you can lay this over top like this, and you can cut the piece that needs to be fused and the piece that doesn't need to be fused, and you can cut the facing, and this just has one piece of self and fusing, and you can cut them at once, and that will save you a lot of time. The next thing you need to do is cut 2 pieces for the left and the right front pant. Because these patterns are the same, you can just lay this over 2 plies of fabric and cut it all at once. The reason there's a right front and there's a left front is because when the garment is sewn together, the right front is going to lap over the left front, and the left front is going to extend under the right front. If you were to cut it as cut in industry, so you have a left front that extends more than the right front, the possibility is, in making only 1 or 2 garments, that you would cut 2 right fronts and therefore you wouldn't have a left front. You don't want to take that chance. So the pattern is set up so that you cut 2 left fronts so that you have the extension, and later when you sew the garment together you trim away that excess on the right front, and that way you prevent the problem of finding that you only have 2 right fronts and you're stuck because now you can't make your pants. So even in the mock-up we're going to do it that way. After you have cut your pieces, be sure to label them. I'm labeling them on what will be the side that shows when the sample is finished. It's the right front pant, the left front pant. Remember, these 2 have been cut exactly the same. We will trim the right front pant back down the center front after we have done some sewing, but we're not going to do that yet. This is the left fly shield, and this is the left fly shield. This is the second piece, which will be like sewn together like that. And this is the right fly facing, which is fused. And the left fly shield is fused on this side. Okay, it's very important to have all this done right. If you make a mistake as you go through this video, go back and fix it. Don't go on. Fix everything whenever you make a mistake. Always check your work and fix right then. Because if you go further, sooner or later, you're going to have to go back and fix it anyway. So that the sooner you fix it, the more time you will save. When you sew the zipper together, this is the equipment you will need. You will need a 7-inch zipper. Actually, it can be any length. It's a matter of having it the correct length for you. But for the sample, it's 7 inches. This is not an industrial zipper foot. Do you see the difference? The needle hole is on opposite sides. In the industry, a zipper is always set with the needle to the operator's right of the foot. This is a cording foot. That's not a zipper foot. If you're using a machine that does not use snap-on feet, an adjustable zipper foot is a very good idea. Again, it's going to be this side that you use to sew the zipper in. This side you can use for cording. Fly zippers are sewn in before their seam is sewn, the same as industrial zippers. This is a snap-on zipper foot. This is the foot you need to use. This is also a zipper foot, but unfortunately it's too wide. So this is a zipper foot you need to use when you're setting zippers. This foot can be used to overcast edges and to edge stitch, but you do not want to use this to set zippers. And while we're talking about setting zippers, you always set the zipper as soon as possible when you make a garment. You do not wait until the end to set a zipper. If you're setting pants, you would want to set the pockets in the front and back pant pieces, and then you would sew the zipper into the front before you do any more sewing on the pants. The first sewing step is to sew the shield together. I want to sew it face to face, so I'm going to turn it over like this. To make this sew more easily, you need to put the side that's not fused down to the feed. The reason is the feed dog will take fabric just a little faster than the presser foot, because the feed dog is moving the fabric underneath the machine, whereas the presser foot is just simply going up and down. Use drafting tape, or if you don't have it, masking tape to put gauges on so that you can take them on or off as you wish. I'm also using a straight stitch foot, and I want to show you this. This one's a snap-on foot. Using a straight stitch foot prevents fabric from jamming in the race. You do not want to use a zigzag foot because you can jam your fabric down in the race, and you really don't need that aggravation. They're worth whatever you have to spend to get them, and they're not that expensive anyway. I'm putting a scrap of fabric underneath the machine to test and also to prevent the possibility of a wad of thread at the beginning of the seam I'm about to sew. I'm going to start to sew. I'm using red thread on top and black thread on the bottom, so you can see which is which as the sample is made. Okay. I have the machine set on the longest stitch in the sewing machine because this is a sample, and if I make a mistake, I can take the threads out more easily. So that's a good idea. When you make the garment, of course, you would use a smaller stitch. And I'm sewing it on 3/16 of an inch. And as I do, because the one piece of the shield that's not fused will stretch out, whereas the fused piece will not. So because I've got the non-fused piece on the bottom, it's sewing together equally, and there's no need to stretch one to fit to the other. I'm going to take it slow as I go around this curve. so that it stays right on gauge. The back tack just a little bit. Okay. The next thing is I'm going to turn this so that it's right side out. You can see the printing now shows. I'm having a little bit of bumps in there, but if I just force it with my fingers, it seems to go. And I'm finger pressing it. This is going to be the side that's going to be up. So finger press it all the way along. Our hands have moisture and heat and pressure, so they can at times act like the same way an iron would act. You always want to sew first and then press. If you press first, you can misalign the fibers, and then you sew and you've sewn the fibers so that they are misaligned. Pretty good that time. I'm going to move the needle over to the right. And just check to make sure the needle's all right. There we go. And this prevents the presser foot from riding on the feed dog. The feed dog is little teeth that stick up at the bottom. And that helps to preserve the feed dog on the sewing machine. You can also use a adjustable zipper foot to do that. This is the better way to edge stitch. And this is what we're doing now. This is what the industry calls edge stitching. I'm using all industrial terms, by the way. And we just ride right around this little edge. Take it slow around this, because it's kind of goes slow around this curve. I'm turning this under here so that it will not show. See, you can see a little bit extending here because the bottom piece is being pushed under just a little bit, and that will happen. Don't worry about that. I've edge stitched the left fly shield, and I'm going to trim away this little excess here because it really doesn't matter. But the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I clip in the notch clip there. So I've already tested this. Whenever you do anything or decide to do anything, first test and set your machine so that it works. The industry does this all the time. I have seen the industry take 20-25 strips of fabric and test to make sure that when they manufacture something, it's going to work. And then they tell the operators on the line to set their machines at this or that or the other so that the operators don't have a problem with sewing the garments together. So I know that this works. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to overcast this edge on the left fly shield. And again, I'm going to make sure that the side that is not fused is down to the feed so as to prevent stretching out, which would happen if we did it this way. We want to have this side down to the feed because this has more give than this side, and the feed dog will take up that give and it will come out even. So here we go. Now you'll see that I'm using a narrow zigzag. This is what you find in high-end French clothing. They use the zigzag a lot. So if you think you have to overcast with a serger, that's not really true. High-end clothing is often zigzagged. I also need to overcast the right fly facing. This we don't have to worry about which side we have up because it's fused. It probably wouldn't fray even if it weren't overcast, but it does give it a nicer finish. The left front pant is going to be overcast all the way up the edge. You'll notice that I'm running one piece right in after the other. That's called chaining through. Make sure, oh, that's pulling, that's no good. All right, when that happens, we can just clip that. And we don't overcast above it because that's going to be cut away anyway. I'm just going to clip, and that'll let it lie flat. Probably there's a better setting for the zigzagging on this to prevent that. But if you're making a sample, this will do. There, now it's lying flat, and that'll do. I'm now going to sew the facing to the right front pant. Again, this is fused, so this is going to be on the top. This is not fused, this is going to be on the bottom. This is face to face. I have put the straight stitch foot back on the machine. I have measured with my ruler so that I have my gauge at 1/2 inch from the needle. In the industry, seam allowances vary. Almost never are seam allowances sewn on 5/8 of an inch. Because if you set the seam allowances at different widths on the pattern before you ever cut out the garment, you don't have seams to trim back. Think about it. If you cut everything out on a 5/8 inch seam allowance, you then sew and then you trim back, you cut the garment out twice. And on top of it, you tend to have kind of sloppy looking garment because it's almost impossible to cut the seam allowances away so that they look neat. So that's what's done. But before the pattern is cut in the fashion fabric, muslins are made to make sure that the garment will fit correctly. So now I'm going to sew this on a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and the reason I am is because then we're going to cut it back to 1/4 inch. This is a situation where in the industry it would be a 1/4 inch, but the right side would be sewn by one group of operators, the left front pant would be sewn by another group of operators to prevent the problem of possibly winding up with 2 right fronts and no left front and ruining the garments. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to back tack. This should be edge to edge down at the bottom with this little tab that extends. Take this out, and I've got my little scrap of fabric back underneath, so when I'm ready to sew again, I don't have a problem with the thread. Alright? The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this away. This wouldn't be done in industry. The patterns would be different, but this is preventing the possibility of having 2 left fronts and no right front. I'm going to trim down to here. And I'm going to trim in. Now I'm going to raise stitch. See this? They're going to be sewn through the right fly facing. First the needle goes down, then the presser foot goes down, and I'm going to sew so that the prong, the inside edge of the left prong, will run right along the gully, and that will keep the raised stitching even, just that fraction of an inch in from the edge. And notice the seam allowances are all lying under the fly facing. Many of my students said they never heard of raised stitching. I said, look inside of your garments. You'll find that manufactured garments are full of raised stitching. And they are. What this does is give a permanent press and force the fly facing to always stay in place and not extend out under the front fly pant. Just a back tack for a couple stitches. It's not as even and straight as I would like, but this is a sample, so it's okay. That's why we're making the sample, so we have practice. I'm now going to sew the zipper to the left fly shield. The first thing I'm going to do is mark 3/8 from the top, because that is where the zipper will close. There's a 3/8 inch seam allowance at the waistline. I want to point out that when you make a garment, if you're using industrial seam allowances instead of the 5/8 that the home sewing industry uses, you need a 3/8 inch seam allowance where you attach a waistband to a garment, because 1/4 inch is not strong enough. You need a 3/8 inch seam allowance. You don't want a 1/2 inch seam allowance. It's just too bulky, but a 3/8 inch is perfect. So I've drawn that line, and that means that when I sew the zipper to this, I'm going to have the stop just below that line. And that's the way I want it to be. We're using a 7-inch zipper in the sample. In the pants you are making, you may need a zipper that's shorter or longer. But for the sample, it's 7 inches. I've got the zipper foot back on the machine. I've got it set on a straight stitch, the longest stitch on the machine. When you make your garment, you can put a little pin there so you know that it's exactly 3/8 of an inch. You want a 3/8 inch seam allowance at the top of any garment that's being sewn into a waistband. 1/4 inch seam allowance is not strong enough. Anything larger than 3/8 is too bulky. Back, check, and down it's going to go. Okay. I'm now going to sew the fly shield to the left front pant. And as you can see, I've laid them face to face. The reason that the shield is on top is because it's fused. The left front pant is not fused, so if I lay the fused side on top, the feed dog will take up the little bit of extra ease in the left pant front, and it will come out edge to edge and even at the end. And sewing down, I had pulled the tab down. Alright, now I'm going to lift up the presser foot and bring the tab up so I can sew the remainder of the way. Always put the needle down first and then the presser foot, and you'll see it's coming edge to edge right here. I'm going to turn the left fly shield over, pant front like this, and I'm going to edge stitch the left front pant down to the shield, and this will prevent the fabric from catching in the teeth when the garment is worn. Pulling the fabric back as far as it will go, and putting the tab up. It's easier to sew past the tab if it's up. I'm going to mark a 1/4 inch line from this edge. You can chalk mark this if you want when you're working on a garment. You wouldn't want to pencil mark your actual garment, but this is a sample. And a sample, you do everything you can to make it as easy as possible to be successful because you're learning how to do it. I'm now going to take the right front pant and right fly facing. I'm going to pin the right fly facing back behind the right front pant. This is the way it's going to be in the garment. It's going to lay back like this. I'll put some pins in it to hold it in place. You probably won't have to do this when you make the actual garment, but for now it's just a sample, so you want to do everything you can to make it easy to learn this procedure. Now I'm going to lay this against the left front pant, edge to edge at that 1/4 inch, because you see what's happening is the right pant is lying over the left pant, and the left pant extends underneath. I'm going to take some pins and pin right here along the edge. This line that you made is actually the center front of the left front pant, and the fold here is the center front of the right front pant. So you want center front to meet center front so that the garment will fit you correctly. Now I'm going to take these pins out. They were just there temporarily to make it easier to pin this. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew the zipper to the facing. To do that, we're going to turn this back. The fly shield turns back, and the right front pant turns back so that we sew just the zipper tape to the facing. And that's it. Notice that the seam has not yet been sewn. Now that we have the zipper sewn to both sides of the pant, we need to sew the seam. First we'll take these pins out. I'm going to turn it over like this. You have to force it because this must lie edge to edge right here. Now in the actual garment, the crotch seam would go further, so you would sew about 1.5 inches up from the inseam so that you can then sew the pants together correctly. But because this is a sample, we can sew right from here. Again, you need a 3/8 inch seam allowance in the crotch. You don't want anything larger because it will be bulky. The seam allowance shouldn't be any smaller because it won't hold. It's very important that the crotch seam not come undone. Hold this like this, edge to edge, and sew it right on that gauge. Again, I'm sewing with the largest stitch on the sewing machine, but when you make an actual garment, you want to use a small stitch. And after you know that this seam is in correctly, you want then to sew over it again. Now you want to make sure you come past the stop on the zipper right here. You go up and you just sew slightly to the edge, just a hair beyond the original stitching that's in there. And I'm going to back tack it. And now we're going to check it to make sure that it's done correctly. Let's see how it is. Okay, that looks pretty good. It should come right to the fold. You see it's coming right up here to the fold. And that's the crotch seam in there. Okay? And it's been back tacked to hold it well. Now the next thing after that is to top stitch the edge. We need to top stitch this through here. So I'm going to lay it like this, and we are going to sew down and bring this in and around so that we get the stitching here that holds this in place. This can be done by hand, and if you're working with fairly expensive fragile fabric, you might want to do that instead, because the top stitching has a more tailored, more workman kind of look. But in this case, we're going to just sew it by machine because we're making the sample. We're going to sew it on gauge, and we make it even, like between the edge of the facing and the tape. And here we go. Okay, so you come all the way down, and when you come into the curve, you want to come and just follow the curve on around and go right across here, and I'm going to back tack it. And that's it. Now you always want to sew with the right front pant down to the feet because this is fused and this isn't. If you try to do it on this side, you're going to have puckering, so you don't want that to happen. Now let's see what we've got. Looks pretty good. Alright, the only thing left to do is to continue the stitching over here, and because I've purposely got my machine set up with red thread on top and black thread on bottom, it's going to be very obvious that I've turned it over. But when you make it in the actual garment, nobody will see that because, I'm going to fold these under like this, because it'll be the same color and it'll look fine. You can make a bar tack there if you wish to hold it tight, which is done a lot with clothes. All right, now we've got the zipper in, and the only thing left to do is we want to sew the facing and the shield together at the bottom so they don't flip open like this in the garment. So let's just take it and go across like this. And guess what? Done. There we are, and that's a sample. And once you've done that, you will feel more confident about doing it in your garment. And this can be put in a sample book if you wish, so you can look at it and see how it's made. Thank you for watching. That's it. We're done.
Great.
I can't believe we got it all done. I can't believe it. And that gets me a better sample for the sample book too, because it was pretty awful. Okay, there we go. That's it.
Would you like to try the opening again now that you are warmed up?
Okay. Have I got news for you? You've been sewing maybe, and you've had trouble setting zippers. Maybe you've given up. You can't put the zippers in. What on earth is the matter? In the industry, sample makers can set 500 zippers a day. 500! They must know something that everyone else doesn't know, right? Right. But now you can find out what they know, and you can use this to solve your zipper problems. And here it is. On my website, you can buy this little booklet for $19.95. You download it, and it shows you all the secrets you need to know so that you can set zippers often in 5 minutes or less. And here's the zippers that you can learn how to set. The first zipper in the book is the Lat hand prick zipper. Lined, finished across the top. You make it a little sample like this. Notice that this one is even cut to match. You first make it in paper like this so that you see how these patterns go together. This is the inside of the garment. This is the outside of the garment. Then you learn how to set it in a curved seam. If you want to set it in a side seam, you need to know how to do that. Once you've learned this is a piece of cake. Every step is diagrammed. Every step has been classroom tested with women just like you, and men as well, by the way. All right, so that's the first zipper. The second zipper set is the invisible zipper set. And here this is. See the back? It shows you how to line it, how to finish it across the top. Again, you first make it in mock-up in paper. We have made a video of that, which you can look at on YouTube. And it's been televised. I've got a secret to tell you about fly zippers. Many people don't know this, but there are 3 zipper sets where you set the zipper first and then you sew the seam. We all know that the invisible zipper is set that way. But did you know that both the right lap and the left lap fly zippers are first set and then the seam is sewn? That's true. To make any of these zippers I'm showing you, including the invisible zipper, you only need a basic zipper foot. You can set all these zippers with these feet. You do not need anything special other than that. And you will see exactly how the industry does it. You can set the right zipper. That's the 3rd zipper in the book. The 4th zipper in the book is the left lap zipper. So you can do it either way. And then we get on to the industrial zipper. This is the railroad zipper. And it's called a railroad because if you open it up, you can see the railroad tracks. See that? There they are. So this is a centered zipper. This is the front and this is the back. And you can see the lining and it's finished across here. What the industry does is set the zipper first and they leave this open so they can shoulder later. All right? You first set your zippers or as soon as you possibly can in making a garment. You would first, of course, make it in mock-up so you understand how the patterns fit together before you actually put it in the garment. And finally, we have the Lat Industrial Zipper. Here it is. And again, you have the patterns so that you can make a mock-up of the patterns and see how it all fits together. And here you make a mock-up in fabric. You can see that it's lined, and again, it's finished around the neck. Notice that it has a hook and a loop there. The railroad zipper also has a hook, metal loop, and you can buy the little book for just $19.95. You download it, and you have all that information, and your zipper problems are solved. Thank you for watching. We're going to have more videos with more information from the industry. We're looking forward to seeing you again. My son's behind the camera. I'm in front of it. We're filming in my studio here in my home where I sew and write my books. Bye for now.